Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Watch Your Heroes Fall. This will be Part 7, Chapter 8, entitled Phase 1, Stage 6. Keep in mind that not all ducks are yours. Aizawa Shota is a chronically exhausted man, maybe a callous man, but he is not a stupid man. And even if he was stupid, he would still have noticed how all Midoriya has been paying attention to in class is his face, the scar just below his eye. That level, assessing, careful creeped him out a little the first day. Sometimes Midoriya is just an intense kid for no reason, so Shota hadn't done anything then. But it's been a week, and Shota is not a stupid man. So now, on Friday after school, as Shota is sending his kids back to their parents, he holds Midoriya at the door. Midoriya blinks at Shota with eyes that know the playing field better than Shota himself, and Shota realizes he was right to hold him. If Midoriya knows why Shota held him back, then there was a reason to hold him back. "I need to talk to you a minute," Shota says. Midoriya uncharacteristically ignores him long enough to wave his friends off with a misty look in his eyes and tell them not to wait up before turning back to Shota inside the classroom. Shota feels his stomach drop. That wasn't an everyday, friendly goodbye. That was the kind of goodbye you give when you're preemptively grieving. Shota should know. He's lived that look as often as seen it. Shota wants to start there, with that goodbye, because he may be a bit callous in how he'll trudge through the bush before going around it. But Midoriya smiles at him, says, "What is it, Mr. Aizawa?" Shota may be a callous man, but that question, asked in the same tone of voice as ever, fills his veins with itching cotton. Something like intuition whispers that the edge of that smile isn't as nervous as it usually is. It's not just calm, it's calculating. Shota has seen those eyes, on vigilantes, or even villains, more often than hero students. Shota has two options here. He can pretend he doesn't understand the glint in Midoriya's eyes. He can ignore it and hope this is just Midoriya being too intense again. He can sweep it under the rug the way he has seen everyone do. He can let Midoriya go home with his friends now, and tell him he'll worry about it later, and he'll regret it for every sleepless night from tonight on. Or he can try to tackle this. Shota has never been great with kids. He's always quicker to let them go than see them hurt, but this class, more than the classes he'd had before, this class, they're his kids. He's bled for them, and he'll bleed again, and he hasn't been able to let them go since he first met them. And truthfully, Shota has noticed for some time that the bright green eyes that showed up to the first day flinching at every slam of a door and breaking eye contact too quickly were becoming darker. Jade. He's noticed it. He's not a stupid man. And he's tried to course correct after Hosu, and he's tried to support after Kamina Ward, and he's trying, but he knows he can't do much for a kid that, really, is smarter than him. Shota knows that what he has over Midoriya in experience is balanced by the fact that the kid is just fucking smart. He knows Midoriya is too smart to keep going on the path he started walking at the beginning of the year. He hates that he knows it, but he does. And Midoriya is. Shota is not a stupid man, however. He knows that if he says anything to spook Midoriya, call his bluff, it's the surest way to drive both of them into a corner. "That's a new burn on your arm," Shota says instead. "It wasn't there this morning." He waits for Midoriya to take the bait. Kachan always practices like he plays. It looks gnarly, skin puckering and swelling already around Midoriya's elbow. How had Midoriya been resting it so casually on the desk? Shota hadn't even known his arm was injured until Midoriya took his jacket off when he stood up after class. "You should get that looked at by Recovery Girl. It could scar." He says it like they can't both see the scars lacing Midoriya's arms already. From the sports festival, from Hosu, from the little things he never went to Recovery Girl for, because he didn't want her diatribe. Midoriya has an excuse cued in his head, and he starts to press play. "Mr. Aizawa." "Midoriya." Shota pauses. He's not sure what he wants to say, or how he should say it. He's not even 100% sure what conversation they're having. He just feels the weight he's trying to hold up. Midoriya's tiny, fragile child body, because they're not just his students, they're his kids. Over a limitless precipice. He knows if he lets go here, he might not have a chance again to pull Midoriya from the edge. "We're here to help. Why don't you go to Recovery Girl?" He knows this is a lot coming from him. Shota's supposed to be stoic, reserved, judgy. He's a teacher, and a strict one. That's what keeps his kids safe. He knows this looks like begging coming from him, and he's not supposed to be that weak in front of his kids, but he doesn't care anymore. He needs Midoriya to stay more than he needs his resolve, even if he doesn't know where Midoriya will be going. "Mr. Aizawa, you know I won't," Midoriya says, smiling and shrugging his jacket back on. "She can fix the way it looks, but she can't make Kachan." He cuts himself off. Even Midoriya doesn't seem to know what to do with that. Shota's once again struck by the fact that Midoriya and Bakugo have history together before UA. It never seemed important before Midoriya was dangling over a ledge. "She can't fix it," he eventually whispers. Sensing a crack in the veneer, Shota's quick to insist. "I could." But Midoriya's eyes flash and he says, "No, Mr. Aizawa." Firm once again, his calculating smile returns with wetter eyes. "But it's okay. I can fix it myself." This is clearly not about the arm anymore. It never really was. Midoriya's dangling over a ledge, and Shota was stupid enough to let it get this far. Shota has never felt this kind of grief without looking at a corpse. He wants to fix it for Midoriya, even if he still isn't sure what it is. He has a feeling Midoriya is about to go somewhere he can't reach. Midoriya is going to be the first friend to jump off the bridge, and others, Shota understands from the way Todoroki and Momo have been exchanging glances with him all week, will follow. Shota wants to make him stay, tell him to let the adults handle it, but he knows he can't fix whatever Midoriya has deemed broken. Those jade eyes have never seen anything as broken before. Damaged and dilapidated, sure, but never broken. Whatever Midoriya is trying to fix must be beyond what others would think to repair, and Shota, as exhausted as he feels and as callous as it looks, has to let Midoriya go. But he doesn't want to, and he has a feeling that once Midoriya leaves the classroom he won't come back. He has no evidence for this other than that wet-eyed, calculating smile. Against his better judgment, he pulls Midoriya into a half-hug, and after a stiff moment, Midoriya clings to him and sobs for maybe 5 minutes. It snaps something in between Shota's lungs, and he feels his own breathing stilt and stifle and sting. He finally snaps and asks, "What's going on, problem child?" And horrifyingly, Midoriya sniffles and straightens and pulls away, instantly changed by the prying. Shota spooked him, and now they're both backed into their corners. Midoriya smiles. "Nothing I can't fix," he says brightly. "Goodbye, Mr. Aizawa. Thanks." He grabs his backpack off the floor and heads for the door, face still wet and eyes still red. In the exit to the classroom, with the door slid all the way open, Midoriya pauses. "Can I—" He stops, recovers his resolve, and shakes his head. Shota wants to beg the question out of him, drag Midoriya bodily away from the ledge, but he just stares, stupidly. "Never mind. Bye, Mr. Aizawa." Shota feels a lump choke his throat, and he tries to force it down with sheer will. He thinks he succeeds before saying, "See you later, Midoriya." But by then, Midoriya's already gone. Shoto goes home with Izuku this weekend, like normal. It feels different because he's not sure when he'll get to see him again after this weekend. Sunday night, Shoto will take the train back to UA, and Izuku will take a different train from the same station to the League of Villains' hideout. Mrs. Inko seems to know it too. She's pulling a cake out of the oven when they step into the house, and there's katsudon already on the table for dinner. She smiles at them, and Shoto thinks she's been crying today, but he doesn't know why he thinks that or what to do about it. Izuku seems to know too. He wraps his mom in a hug that's tighter than normal, and after a moment, he opens his arm for Shoto to join the hug too. Shoto almost wonders if he told Mrs. Inko about their plan, but Izuku is crying with her, so no. They eat katsudon and laugh a lot, even when Shoto was sure there wasn't a joke. After dinner, customarily, Shoto goes to take a shower, while Izuku and Mrs. Inko do the dinner dishes. The first few times Shoto insisted on helping with the dishes, but now Shoto knows that Izuku and Mrs. Inko use the time to just be with each other, the way they were for a decade and a half before Shoto knew them, and he doesn't fight the shower anymore. Truthfully, Shoto wants to keep the routine of this weekend as normal as possible. He wants it to be like every other weekend he's had here. The Midoriya house has been nothing for Shoto if not safe and consistent. Everything his own home isn't. And once Izuku takes that train on Sunday night, Shoto won't have an excuse to come back here. It would just be Miss Inko, and the weight of what they both know Izuku shouldn't have to do. Shoto knows that Mrs. Inko is not a stupid woman, and she very likely knows that Izuku won't be home for a while. He takes his shower at the normal time after dinner, even if he wants to cling to Izuku like the mossed rocks at the edge of a stream. He lets Miss Inko have a moment with her son, too. After his shower, it's already something like 8. Too late for the sun to be out and too early for the moon to be up. Miss Inko sets to frosting the cake while Izuku goes to take a shower. Shoto sits at the kitchen table and watches Miss Inko's steady hands guide the frosting knife around the cake. Funny how he can watch her hold a knife for an hour and feel the rhythm relaxing his bones. But Miss Inko always puts the kettle in the cupboard above the fridge while Shoto visits. Maybe Shoto could visit his own mother on the weekends after Izuku leaves, if the school lets him go home at weekends at that point. Wouldn't that be a blessing, not having to go home? If the hospital lets him stay overnight with her. As one of the documented sources of her trauma, it's unlikely the doctors would let him stay longer than an hour or two. Plus, they're under Endeavor's thumb and payroll, so they'd likely send him right home. Miss Inko isn't frosting anymore. She's sitting in a chair, smiling softly at Shoto. "Sho-chan, you look like you've got something on your mind." She reaches out with one hand and realizes that hand is covered in frosting, switches to reach out with the other hand to wipe one stray tear from Shoto's cheek. He hadn't realized he was anywhere close to crying. Shoto feels his eyes glance up toward the ceiling where, upstairs, Izuku's showering. Miss Inko, of course, reads him like a book. Her smile grows bittersweet, and her eyes go wet, and she rests her palm on Shoto's face, thumb brushing his scarred cheekbone, says, "You'll take care of him for me, won't you, Sho-chan?" And Shoto has to look away with her loving, trusting face. And she has to know that he can't go with Izuku this time. And he has to say, "I promise, I will." The rest of the weekend is exactly the same routine as every other weekend at the Midoriyas. On Sunday night, Miss Inko hugs Izuku for a long time as she says, "You come home to me, Izuku. Promise me you're coming home." Izuku doesn't try to pretend that his mom is an idiot. He doesn't try to pretend she has guessed wrong. He hugs her hard and says, "I promise, Mom." "You too, Sho-chan. Promise me that you're coming home to me." "I promise. We're both coming home." Then they walk to the train station together. "Shoto, please, don't make me say it." Shoto can feel his hands and fists, can feel his shoulders hiked, can feel his jaw tight like a spring. He doesn't want to say goodbye. He can't. They'll still be able to communicate, technically, through the red notebooks Shoto will leave at the train station on weekends and in the loose brick in UA's outermost wall every night. But they won't be able to see each other face to face. They can't be together like they are now, holding hands, holding each other. They won't be able to kiss or cuddle, can't even glance at him from across the room when Kaminari says something dumb. "Can we just pretend today's like normal?" Shoto sees Izuku's heartbreak in his eyes when he says, "Okay," with a smile, but he doesn't know what else to do. What do you say when your whole little world is crumbling with every step toward the train station? Izuku, usually such a crybaby, is being strong for both of them while Shoto feels the tears slip away. The train station comes too soon. Shoto. Shoto's never been closer to begging before in his life. He would beg now, if it would make Izuku stay. But it wouldn't, and they both know that. And the last thing Shoto wants to do is make this harder for Izuku. Izuku's world is falling apart too. Shoto chokes on the words, and he pulls into Izuku, holds him probably too tight to be comfortable. "Just promise me you're going to be okay." Izuku holds onto Shoto just as tight, and Shoto feels his sweater dampening with tears until it sticks to his skin. "I promise, Shoto. I swear to you that I'm going to come back to you. And if Endeavor ever..." Shoto breathes in the scent of Izuku's hair, probably for the last time in a while. "I know," he reassures him. "It won't come to that." "Can you..." Izuku's crying hard now, clutching Shoto's shirt with both hands. "Can you take care of my mom for me? Please?" Shoto can count on one hand the things he wouldn't do for Miss Inko, and he can't think of anything he wouldn't do for Izuku. Of course. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 8 of Watch Your Heroes Fall. This was a tough one to read, I'll be honest. I always struggle with the goodbye with Aizawa. Let me know your all's thoughts and reactions to this one. Chapter 9 will be up next, and as always, thank you so much for listening.